everybody. So I write science fiction and fantasy, as Brady mentioned, and Brady asked me to come and do a talk sort of based on my fiction, so it's going to be a little different. I decided to talk about the history of magic in this novel I just finished, so warning, there's going to be spoilers. So there's a few different ways of doing magic. There's a bunch of different ways, but a couple that come to mind is, one, you can just be like Doctor Strange and just kind of have lots of wacky shit with no real reason why it's happening. Like he's got the Eye of Agamotto, and there's just wacky shit. Or like Harry Potter, where it's like, we speak Pig Latin and stuff happens. Or the other second way is that you can just basically take a real life thing like druids, these are druids, and just kind of strip it of its some of its cultural context and plunk it down in your world and just kind of appropriate it and make it your own. And I didn't want to do either of those things. I wanted to kind of come up with something that was new and a little bit strange, that felt grounded in reality but also kind of unique. This is a book cover from Patricia McKillop, who does an amazing job with magic in her books. So I wanted to do something that was a little bit different, and I didn't want to have magical creatures like elves or whatever. So I figured that in my world, magic is, it's not advancing down here, but okay. In my world, magic is just like the tip of a much greater iceberg. Like the thing that we call magic is just like one tiny aspect of like a much larger thing. And I figured magic came from basically a few thousand years ago. Someone got lost in the woods and they were scared and they were confused, and they met kind of a magical presence that spoke to them through like a tree or a stream or something, and it gave them a quest. It gave them a question that they had to answer, that they had to go out, and they gave them powers to help them do that. And this person tried and failed. So they recruited successors to carry on the quest and passed on the powers to them, and they failed as well. And those people recruited successors who also failed. And eventually, you had sorcerers who had apprentices, but the actual original question that this person was supposed to be answering, the mystical question that this person was sent out to answer, was just lost in mumbo-jumbo. And, you just had different kinds of sorcerers. Magic spread all over the world, and different parts of the world had different kinds of magic, different systems of magic. But there were two main kinds of magicians in the world. There were healers and tricksters. And healers are basically what you'd expect: super compassionate, super helpful. They'll heal your diseases. They care about the balance of nature. They're wise and serene. And then tricksters are kind of also what you'd expect. They will pull the wool over your eyes. They try to give you a bad bargain. They try to kind of confuse you. And that's actually the book cover of a book called Coyote, I think, by Christopher Moore, which is about tricksters. And he's awesome. And so those are the two kinds of magicians, healers and tricksters. And the healer school is called Pemberley Hall. It's basically a fancy boarding school where everybody dresses fancy, and that's actually a picture of Eton, which is a fancy boarding school in England. But Pemberley Hall is in the Alps, and everybody wears uniforms. The trickster school is called the Maze. And it's a place where you basically, as the name suggests, you'll get lost and confused. There are lots of things that don't really make sense. There's lots of traps and bottomless pits and things, and people whose faces change every time you meet them and stuff, and it's really confusing. So a lot of people think that tricksters are evil and healers are good, like chaos and order or whatever. But in fact, healers can be judgmental dicks, and tricksters can be incredibly helpful and actually really cool people. So back in the 1820s, the Industrial Revolution happened, and some of the healers were like, we have to stop this. This is going to destroy the balance of nature. And a lot of the tricksters said, no, you can't interfere. It's not on us to do that. So there was a huge war between tricksters and healers, and this woman put a stop to it. This is Hortense Walker, who was an escaped slave from Barbados, who became the greatest magician of her time. And she was actually a trickster. But she realized that trickster magic and healer magic actually work much better if you combine them and use them together, and that tricksters and healers are just two small parts of a much larger whole, as I said. And that, and so she convinced them to join forces, and they came up with a rule to make sure that this would never happen again. The rule of aggrandizement that basically says that you can't be too proud or interfere in the world too much, or try to take over the world like Voldemort. And that's a question I always have about magical systems, is why don't the magicians just try to take over the world? So there's a rule against that, aggrandizement. But also, they agreed on a safeguard, which is that if things got really bad, like the Industrial Revolution seemed to be leading to things that were going to really really, really fuck everything up and destroy the balance of nature, they were going to have a safeguard, which is called the unraveling. And the unraveling, I don't want to tell you too much about that because it's kind of a spoiler, but basically it would really solve the problem. Like, it would really solve the problem. Like, balance of nature totally restored. That's about all I can tell you about it. But anyway, so hopefully eventually you'll be able to read that, and thank you very much.